Hey gang, just to let you know, you can now use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, at flipsidegaming.com and originalmagicart.store. Using the code gets you 10% off orders $10 or more, and you get to help out the channel at the same time. We are back at it once more. How many has this been? Today, my friend Scott has joined us playing Grimgrin, and he keeps Polluted Delta, Underground River, Dimir Signet, Talisman of Dominance, Diregraph Colossus, Diregraph Captain, and Vengeful Dead. We've got a new guy to the channel, Cedric, and he's playing Baral, keeping Jace Beleren, Vapor Snag, an Island, Orazka Relic, Crush of Tentacles, and Oracle's Vault. My buddy Chef is playing my Daretti deck, keeping Buried Ruin, Darksteel Citadel, Neventhal's Disc, Sculpting Steel, Scarecrow, Grim Monolith, and Tormod's Crypt. Lastly, I am playing Dralnu because he's the best Dimir commander, and I keep Underground River, Cabal Coffers, Swarm Intelligence, Seed of the Synod, an Island, and Fetid Pools. Chef wins the die roll and starts us off. Chef plays a Darksteel Citadel, and he plays a Tormod's Crypt. Cedric plays an Island, and he passes. Scott plays a Halimar Depth, passing as he rearranges the top 3 cards of his library. I play an Island for my turn, and I pass. Chef plays a Buried Ruins as land for turn, and he casts Grim Monolith. He then taps it to cast Sculpting Steel, and has the steel come in as a copy of the Monolith, before passing to Cedric. Cedric plays an Island, and we see Baral hit the field. Scott plays a Darkslick Shores, and he casts Dimir Signet before passing to me. I play an Island, and I pass. Chef plays a Mountain, and he casts the Disc before passing turn. Cedric plays an Island, and he casts Jace Beleren. He then upticks Jace, and we all draw 1 card. Scott plays an Underground River, and I cycle the Fetid Pools, drawing a card. Scott then casts a Talisman of Dominance, and he taps out to cast a Rhystic Study. I play an Island for my turn, and I cast Swiftfoot Boots, paying the 1 for the study tax. Chef pays 3 to cast Commander Sphere, and Scott gets to draw. Chef then plays a Goblin Welder, letting Scott draw again. With nothing else, he passes. Cedric plays a Field of Ruin, and he casts a Orazka Relic. He pays the 1 extra to deny Scott a card draw, but then gives Scott a card by having everyone draw with Jace. Scott plays a Polluted Delta, cracking it and taking 1 to go and find a swamp. He then casts a Diregraph Colossus, and then follows up with a Diregraph Captain. Because of the Colossus being on the field when he casts it, Scott gains a 2/2 zombie token. I play a Seed of the Synod, and I cast Thran Dynamo, allowing Scott to draw a card as I can't pay. Chef plays an Urza's Power Plant, and he pays 5 to cast Daretti. He then upticks the Walker, pitching 2 artifacts and drawing 2. He then passes. Cedric plays an Island, and he upticks Jace to let us all draw a card. He then casts Favorable Winds, and he passes turn. Scott draws for turn, and he moves to combat. He swings everything at Daretti, and Chef decides to let Daretti die, and in his second main phase, Scott casts Ponder, rearranging the top 3, and he draws. Scott then casts a Gravecrawler, and gains another tap zombie from the Colossus trigger. Scott then casts a Vengeful Dead, gaining another tap zombie token from the Colossus, and he passes. I play an Underground River and tap all but 1 to cast Swarm Intelligence, letting Scott draw a card. Chef plays a Mountain, and he casts an Unstable Obelisk, and then a Cart Clan Ironworks, which has Scott drawing 2. Cedric pays 5 to cast Dawson to Perfection, letting Scott draw a card. He then has a table draw a card as he upticks his Jace. He plays an Island for his turn, and he passes, and we realize that he gains City's Blessing. Scott draws for turn, and he plays Cavern of Souls, naming zombies. He then casts one of the first cards I fondly remember playing in Standard, Grolf's Messenger, gaining a tap zombie token on cast, and dealing 2 to Cedric as it enters the battlefield. Moving to combat, Scott swings everything at Chef, dealing 21 points of damage in a swing. He has to discard down to 7 from the million cards he's drawn at the end of turn, and he passes to me. I play a Gaia Reach Sanitarium, and I cast Fabricate, paying the 1 for the study trigger, and getting a second copy thanks to Swarm Intelligence. I find a Mana Vault and a Soul Ring, putting them to my hand. I don't want to run them out immediately because that threatening disc is still in the field, so I move to my end step, discarding and passing. Chef plays an Ancient Tomb, and pays 6 to cast Mindslaver. I cast Brainstorm while the artifact is on the stack, and Scott draws as I don't pay the 1. I put 2 back, and then resolve my second copy thanks to Swarm Intelligence. Unfortunately, the Mindslaver resolves, and Chef taps his Commander Sphere for 1 red and sacrifices it to draw a card. Scott takes this as an opportunity to try and bounce the Mindslaver back to Chef's hand, but Chef sacrifices the 2 copies of Grim Monolith to Clan Ironworks, gaining 4 colorless, and pays to activate the Mindslaver. He sacrifices it and targets Scott to take his next turn, passing. Cedric plays a Trophy Mage in his main phase, and Scott draws. He goes and he finds an Inspiring Statuary, and he puts it to his hand. He then upticks Jace, but with the ability on the stack, I cast Turnabout, gaining a second copy. I untap my lands for the first copy, floating it, and then untap it again. Scott gets to draw from the original copy of Turnabout, and I then use my floating mana to cast Notion Thief, but I pay the 1 extra. I then draw 4 cards, as Notion Thief steals everyone else's draw from the Jace ability, and I feel pretty good about myself. Cedric then passes, and at the end of turn, I activate Gyreach Sanitarium, making everyone draw and discard a card, or in this case, everyone just gets to discard a card, while I get to draw 4. Chef shifts over to Scott's turn, and he casts Soul Ring and plays an Urborg, but doesn't give Cedric enough time to cast a Vapor Snag on the Vengeful Dead. This bounces the zombie and deals 1 to Scott. Cedric gets to make a human wizard token from the Docent, and as he controls more than 3 wizards, the Docent also flips to become Final Iteration. Chef then casts Scott's Grimgrin, gaining a zombie token on cast. Moving to combat, he swings everything he can at me, dealing 24 points of damage and putting me to 16. In his second main phase, he sacrifices the Messenger to Grimgrin, dealing 1 to me with the Captain trigger, and then deals 2 more to me when the Messenger comes back. He sacrifices the Messenger again, dealing 1 to me with the Captain, and then sacrifices the rest of the board except for the Captain to deal 7 more damage to me with 7 triggers from the Captain. Chef then recasts Gravecrawler from the graveyard, and sacrifices it to Grimgrin again, dealing 1 more to me, and he does it again, dealing a further 1. He then tries for a 3rd time, but I mana drain the Gravecrawler to save myself from dropping any further, paying the 1 extra for it to deny him the draw. He then passes, and at the end of Scott's turn, Chef taps the Welder to swap the Mindslaver with the Tormod's Crypt. He then sacrifices 2 artifacts to Clan Ironworks to activate Mindslaver, and then takes my next turn. We then move to my turn, or as I like to call it, Chef's 3rd turn of the round, and he plays Cabal Coffers as my land for turn, and then activate Cabal Coffers. He casts Soul Ring, and the Talisman of Dominance. He then remembers he has 1 floating from Mana Drain, and he casts Clever Impersonator, having it become a copy of the Notion Thief. He activates the Sanitarium, drawing only 4 cards because sadly Notion Thief doesn't stack, and discards. He forgets to discard, but frankly I'm probably dead at this point. He casts Dramatic Reversal, getting 2 copies of it and floating tons of colorless from my rocks, and he casts a Mind Stone. He then casts Cryptic Command, choosing to tap all permanents and bounce a target, but Cedric counters the first copy. The second copy then resolves, and Chef bounces Grimgrin to Scott's hand and taps all of Cedric's creatures. Having had his fun for turn, Chef then taps my Talisman of Dominance to deal 1 to me and uses the mana to cast Snuff Out, killing Final Iteration. The spell wasn't supposed to happen, but unfortunately we didn't learn this until later, and then I die. Chef is finally back on his own turn, and he plays a Reliquary Tower. He then recasts Daretti, taking 2 from the Ancient Tomb, and he upticks the Walker, discarding and drawing a card. Cedric upticks Jace, having the table draw a card. He then sacrifices Orazka's Relic, drawing a card and gaining 3 life. He passes to Scott, but at the end of turn, Chef activates Welder, swapping the Ironworks for Tormod's Crypt. He then activates the Crypt and exiles Scott's graveyard. Scott pays 2 to cast Felwar Stone in his main phase, and he brings out Endless Ranks of the Dead. Scott then recasts Grimgrin, making sure to use the mana from his Cavern of Souls so he can't be countered. He then passes. Chef plays a Jester's Cap and takes 2 tapping the Ancient Tomb to activate it, targeting Scott. He gets to go through Scott's library and exiles 3 cards from it. He exiles Havengul Lich, Lord of the Undead, and Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Chef then upticks Daretti, discarding 2 and drawing 2, before passing turn. Cedric once again upticks Jace, drawing the table a card. He plays an island as land for turn, and he casts Factor Fiction, allowing Scott to make the piles. Cedric chooses to take the pile of 4 cards, banning the Torrential Gearhulk, and he ends his turn, discarding down to 7. Scott sadly gains no zombies from Endless Ranks of the Dead on his upkeep, as half of a zombie rounded down is 0. He plays a Mutavault as land for turn, and he casts Machias the Unhallowed, making sure to use the mana from Cavern to make it uncounterable. Scott then casts Disciple of Bolas, sacrificing Grimgrin and gaining 6 life and 6 cards. Grimgrin also comes back with the +1/+1 counter thanks to the Undying he gains from Machias. Scott then passes his turn and discards down to 7. Chef casts a Mirror Retriever in his main phase, and he upticks Daretti, pitching 2 and drawing 2. Scott realizes he didn't pay 1, and he draws from the study trigger. With nothing else, Chef passes. Cedric plays an island, and he downticks Jace, only allowing himself to draw. He then casts a Kefnet's Monument, allowing Scott to draw a card, and he passes. Scott gains 1 2/2 zombie token at the beginning of his upkeep thanks to Endless Ranks of the Dead. He plays a Nykthos Shrine to Nyx as his land for turn, and he casts Grave Pact, which is negated by Cedric. Cedric doesn't pay the extra though, and Scott gets a draw. Scott then casts Liliana's Mastery, gaining 2 more zombie tokens that come attached with an Anthem effect. Scott then activates the Nykthos to generate a good chunk of black mana, and he pays 3 to cast Yawgmoth's Will. He then casts Grave Pact from his graveyard, but Cedric counters it with a Surged Overwhelming Denial. Scott uses the remaining floating black and taps his Cavern to cast Phyrexian Arena. He then sacrifices the Disciple of Bolas to give Grimgrin a +1/+1 counter and untap him. The Disciple does get exiled because of Yawgmoth's Will though. He moves to combat and swings Grimgrin and Mikaeus at Cedric. He puts Grimgrin's on attack trigger to destroy Baral, which gives Grimgrin another +1/+1 counter, but this still leaves Cedric with the ability to block with the Human Wizard token, and he does so. As a result, Cedric only takes 6 damage from the unblocked Mikaeus, and Scott passes turn. Chef downticks Daretti in his main phase to swap Mirror Retriever and the Mindslaver. He also returns Tormod's Crypt to his hand as the Retriever dies, which he then casts. Chef then casts a Toper Orb, which he doesn't pay 1 for, and Scott draws a card. Cedric plays an island for his turn, and he downticks Jace so that only he can draw a card. He then sacrifices the Field of Ruin to destroy Chef's Urza's land, and everyone, including Scott, gets to go find a basic. Cedric then casts Baral, letting Scott draw 1, and at the end of turn, Chef takes 2 life, tapping his Ancient Tomb, and taps 2 more lands to activate Mindslaver and takes Scott's next turn. Scott, or should I say Chef, gains 2 zombie tokens from Endless Ranks of the Dead, and loses 1 drawing from the arena and then drawing for turn. He then casts Reanimate, losing 4 life and targeting the Corpse Augur. Chef, or should I say Scott, then activates Nykthos for 11 black mana, and he casts Hero's Downfall on Grimgrin. He puts Grimgrin into the bin, and then casts Phyrexian Delver, bringing back Grimgrin and losing 5 life. Chef then sacrifices Delver to Grimgrin, giving him a +1/+1 counter and untapping him. It comes back with Undying, and he brings back Scott's Vengeful Dead, which causes Scott to take another 4. Chef then sacrifices the Augur to Grimgrin, and has the On Death trigger target his own graveyard. This has Scott lose 3 life and draw 3 cards. The Augur then comes back, and we realize that both Chef and Cedric should have lost 1 from the Vengeful Dead seeing the Augur die. Chef then casts Lord of the Accursed, and cycles Gempalm Polluter, targeting Scott. Scott loses 11 life, and he draws a card. Chef then casts a Vindictive Lich, sacrificing it to Grimgrin. He has Cedric lose 5 life as it dies, and both Chef and Cedric lose 1 from the Vengeful Dead. Moving to combat, Chef swings 3 tokens and Mikaeus at Cedric, who blocks 1 of the zombie tokens and then drops to 5. In Scott's second main phase, we see Chef sacrifice 5 creatures to take out Cedric, dealing 5 to Chef and 5 to Cedric. This also deals 6 to Scott with the Augur's on Death trigger, causing him to lose 6 life and draw 6 cards. Chef then sacrifices Mikaeus, dealing 1 to himself sadly, and then the Vengeful Dead itself, dealing a further 1. He casts an Animate Dead to bring back the Augur, and sacrifices it to Grimgrin, causing Scott to lose enough life with the On Death trigger to close out the game. Game review time. So I'm pretty sure anyone who's paying attention should have realized that Phyrexian Delver should not have brought back any creatures thanks to the Toper Orb. We realized this after the game, but we were aware that Chef had the untapped Goblin Welder, which he would have easily been able to switch something from his graveyard with the Toper Orb and allowed the whole sequence to happen, so we decided to let it go. It was a bit of an oversight, but considering he was playing 3 decks basically, it was easy to see that things could be overlooked. My Dralnu deck did a hot steaming bowl of nothing unfortunately, and it was kind of disappointing that I only drew lands and played mana rocks, and then basically just died. Similarly, we didn't get to see Baral do very much except for counter a few spells and cause the table to draw a bunch of cards. I was pretty impressed with how much Scott was able to do considering how little mana he had. I think I'm always torn as to who's the best zombie commander in Dimir, but I do like Grimgrin. But I also like Gisa and Geralf, and the Scarab God. So it's really I don't know what to say. I don't know. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.